guys, so today we are doing 1.5 within our logic section, and it has to do with something called negations. So in the previous window we talked about, or in your vocabulary words, we talked about something called negation. It says here a negation of a statement has the opposite truth value from that of the original statement. So negating is basically changing it to the opposite. So like, if I run to the store, then I'm going to pay money. So the negation would be switching it. So if I do not go to the store, then I do not spend money. So it's changing it to its not. Okay? So basically, if I have a conditional statement, so I have my hypothesis and my conclusion. If I change this to its opposite, that's negating it. If I change this to its opposite, that's negating it, if that makes sense. So whenever you do that to both the hypotenuse and the conclusion, that is called the inverse. So right here it says the inverse of a conditional statement negates both the hypothesis and the conclusion of the conditional statement. So right here I have this conditional statement. If I was born in Texas, then I am a Texan. So if I write the inverse of that, I'm going to change it to not and not. I'm going to negate it. And this is what the negation symbol looks like here. I'm going to negate it. So here we go. Let's go ahead and do this. So I would put if I was not born in Texas, then I am not a Texan. So it might be out of the screen, but if you guys look, not, that is negating it. So when I negate both the hypothesis and the conclusion, I am doing the inverse. Okay? So now there's something called the contrapositive. So in the previous lesson, we learned about something called converse. Converse is where I switch both of these, correct? Contrapositive is a combination of inverse and converse. So it's a combination of both of those. So I'm going to first do the converse, switch it, and I'm going to negate it. Does that make sense? So for contrapositive, I would now take this right here, which is my hypothesis, and I would take this, which is my negated conclusion, and I would swap those. So now the contrapositive would be if I am not a Texan, then I was not born in Texas. So again, I was not. Sorry, I forgot to put the not. So the not is what negates it, and we switched it. So remember, the contrapositive is a switch of the inverse and the contrapositive. So you're flipping those. Okay? So now let's switch over and let's look at the example. Alright guys, so let's look at example number 1. So on example number 1, it says it wants to write the converse, the negations, the inverse, and the contrapositive, all this. So as you work through this, it'll all come clear surely whenever you go through. So let's go and work through. So the first thing it wants is what is the truth value of the conditional? I don't know, let's read it. So if today is Monday, then tomorrow is Tuesday. I'm going to go ahead and say the truth value on that is obviously going to be true, because if today is Monday, then tomorrow will be Tuesday. That's how it works in this world. Okay? So next it wants the hypothesis. So I'm going to go ahead and just circle it, but you guys need to write it out on your paper. So if today is Monday, then tomorrow is Tuesday. So whatever comes after the if is always going to be your hypothesis. So that is your P. And whatever comes after the then is always going to be your conclusion, which is going to be your Q. So if P, then Q. Okay? So now next on your paper, I want you to write the converse. So remember, converse is when you flip those. So I'm going to take the hypotenuse, and I'm going to take the conclusion, and I'm going to flip it. So your converse would be if tomorrow is Tuesday, then today is Monday. So that would be your converse. Okay? So now what it wants you to do, it wants you to negate both of Q and P. So it wants you to negate those. And remember, negating means that you're going to change those to their opposite. So if I was to negate my hypothesis, it would be today is not Monday. If I was to negate the Q, it would be tomorrow is not Tuesday. So that's what you would put on the negation of Q and P. So then on the inverse, remember, inverse is the negation of both the hypothesis and the conclusion. So this would be your inverse of your conditional. So if today is not Monday, then tomorrow is not Tuesday. So I negated both of those. So when I negate both of those, that is going to be your inverse. Okay? So now lastly, remember, contrapositive is the converse and the inverse combined to each other. So that means I'm going to flip them and I'm going to negate them. So I'm basically going to take this sentence right here and I'm going to flip it. So now lastly, my contrapositive is if tomorrow is not Tuesday, then today is not Monday. So from the original conditional statement, I negated them. So see the not and the not, and I swapped them. Tomorrow is not Tuesday, then today is not Monday. So remember, contrapositive is just a combination of these two. So hopefully you can go through these and walk these, and let's go ahead and look. If tomorrow is not Tuesday, then today is not Monday. So with that being said, the truth value of this guy is going to be true as well. So if you look, the conditional and the contrapositive always have the same. Alright guys, so to make this quick, I'm just going to run through example 2 real quick. So hopefully guys you can stay with me. Here we go. So right now I have a conditional statement. If you don't stand for something, then you'll fall for everything or fall for anything. So we have an if and then statement. So what I need to do first is it wants me to point out the hypothesis and the conclusion. So right here, anything that comes after if, this is always going to be your hypothesis. So right here, this guy is going to be your P. Anything that comes after the then is always your conclusion. So this is going to be your Q. So if P, then Q. That's how it works. So now next, it wants you to write the converse. So what I'm going to do is converse, we swap both of these, right? So I'm going to say, if you'll fall for anything, then you do not stand for something. So the converse would be, if you'll fall for anything, then you do not stand for something. So that is the converse, okay? So now the next thing, we need to do the negation of P and Q, and then we're going to write the inverse. So right now, I would negate P. So you would say, if you do stand for something, then you will not fall for anything. So I have to negate P and negate Q. So you guys will negate those. And when you do that, it'll then create your inverse. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to negate P. So on the inverse, it should say, if you do, because remember, I'm doing the opposite of that. You do stand for something, then you will not fall for anything. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be your inverse because I negated both of them. I changed don't into do, and I changed will not fall for anything. I put the not, so I negated both of those. So now remember, lastly, the contrapositive is a combination of converse and inverse. So I'm going to negate them and switch them. So I'm going to take P and Q, I'm going to switch them and negate them. So this should be your contrapositive. So you should say, if you do not fall for anything, then you will stand for something. Then you do stand for something. So if you look right there, if you do not, so I changed this into not, And then right here, you do, I change do into don't, or I switch those, and I swap them. Okay? So remember, contrapositive is a combination of converse and inverse. So the truth value of both of these are going to be true, because always the conditional and the contrapositive are always going to have the same truth value.